Today I'm going to share with you some of my favorite nervous system techniques. These are the ones that I use on a daily or almost daily basis. Hey everyone, I'm Sonia. Welcome to my channel where I give you tips and strategies to have the fulfilling lives and relationships that you want. And today I am talking again about nervous system regulation. So today's video is going to be a little more personal just because I'm sharing which particular nervous system regulation practices I use, and just a little more about how they fit into my life. This isn't actually going to be a video where I take you through them. What I'm going to do instead is have you, I'll tell you very specifically what it is so you can find another YouTube video on it. For one or two of them, I might put a link below to a video that I really like about it. But it's not so much about me sharing the practice. There's just one of them in particular that I'm an expert in and have training in, and I'll share when that comes. But it's just more like to give you sort of, I guess, inspiration, hopefully from my own experience about how I can have this whole variety of techniques, and how they can help. So hopefully hearing a personal experience about that will help you. And I did do another video that I will link to this one, which was my first one, which was tips about nervous system regulation, pretty general tips, but also that was just more conceptually to try to bring you into how that sort of overall concept fits into someone's life like mine and how it can fit into yours. So like I said, I'll link that. And this is just going to get a little more specific with a list of techniques, kind of short and sweet, but personal too. Okay, so I'm putting them in a particular order, but it's not really about this is my top one in the sense of like, I like it the most or that kind of thing. Because as you'll see, I use them in different ways. So number one is breath work. And when I say breath work, I mean a full breathwork experience. And so this is the one I am trained in. I'm trained in a particular style called elemental rhythm breathwork. And I do have an email list for that. I don't always include that everywhere. I sort of have a couple different, kinds of things that I do for people, but I'll include it in the description box for this video since I'm talking about it. And sometimes I have a regular weekly class that's going right now. That's going to be off for a little while, and then that's going to come back eventually. But I do have also periodic things that I offer. So if that's of interest to you, great. There's also many different kinds of techniques of breathwork though that do this kind of full breathwork experience. So sometimes that will include something else like a guided meditation like mine does, sometimes not. But the idea here, the reason I'm talking about this full breathwork experience, I'll get into breathing more generally in a minute, is because this can be such a powerful reset. So what happens with the breath work when you do these longer experiences of the breath work is that your brainwave states shift. So they go from that beta state, that's a more alert state, often when we're working or thinking or that kind of thing that we're in a lot of the time, to alpha and sometimes delta. So alpha is the one that's like light meditation, a relaxed state. So that I think almost everybody will get into that naturally if they're going along with the breath work, as instructed, they will get into that. And then some people will also go into delta, which is more of the deep meditation state. Sometimes you don't even realize you were in it. It's kind of, often people will tell me afterwards that they, weren't sure if they fell asleep or not. And sometimes, you can fall asleep during these kinds of practices because they're so relaxing. But often it's that you're in delta. And so that's why it doesn't feel like you have these conscious memories of it the same way. You sort of know you had an experience, but you don't really have the conscious memory in the same, that sort of logical mind kind of way because you're in deep meditation. And so why is that such a powerful reset? It's a wonderful reset in terms of regulation because you've gone into this relaxation, right? So when you come out, you feel fantastic. You feel really, really good. And so I often do this because it's kind of that full reset mode, right at the beginning of my workday, or sometimes if I'm switching, I have kind of a lot of different areas that I work in. And so I'll do it, whether I quote unquote need it or not. Like I said in the last video, sometimes it's not that you feel particularly dysregulated, but I'll do it sort of as a shift because it helps me shift from one thing to the other to have that sort of deep brainwave state shift happen between the things. And then that starts me off in this wonderful mode. Plus I'm sort of in a more creative mode because I was just in that brainwave state where we can be more associative and creative. So that's one that's really great as sort of a big shift, big experience kind of thing. It also can be just used regularly because you find it helpful to relax to that extent. That's a good thing for our bodies, right? Okay, so my second one that I recommend and that I use, and this can be absolutely done in the moment, is to do just some deeper and slower breathing. So how that might look is if you notice you're a little dysregulated, let's say you notice you're a little anxious or you just want to relax a little more, get into a more relaxed state, you would start to breathe more deeply than your usual breath. And in the breathwork practice that I use, it's in through the nose, out through the mouth. It could potentially be just in through the nose, out through the nose as well, or in through the mouth, out through the mouth if your nose is stuffy. But the idea is that your breaths are a little deeper than your normal breaths, and you're filling like the bottom of the lungs first, which makes your belly rise, then the chest, and then you're actually in that last bit, you're pulling up into here, depending on how deep you're breathing. So however deep you make it, that feels comfortable for you, because you know, we want this to be slow, deep breathing too, not like you're hyperventilating, right? Although that often is more shallow breathing, but still the speed being slow for what I'm talking about here is important. Some breathwork practices do take things faster and faster, and that's for that whole experience that I was talking about. But if you're just in the moment, you want it to be those slow, deep breaths. You can do it to a count of 4 in and 4 out if that's helpful to you. But really trying to make it that it'll turn on that parasympathetic nervous system because of this deep breathing. And so another thing you can add in, which is really nice, is once you've done that sort of 4 count in and out, slightly deeper than normal or a lot deeper than normal, whatever feels comfortable to you, you can then switch to an extended exhale. So that might be 4 count in, 8 count out, and the exact amount of out. That exact count, you know, if you run out of breath at 7, that doesn't really matter. It's more just about extending that exhale, and that will get you more and more relaxed. So that will help regulate your nervous system. So that's one that people often like to try because it's somewhat familiar to them. But some of these other ones that I'm going to bring up may be less familiar, but I really love them. And these are ones that have been fairly new to me, you know, over the last year, let's say, and even a couple just in the last month. But they're really, really nice to have as a variety to choose from, and also just because they work really well. Okay, so a third possibility, and I just feel like doing it while I'm talking, so I'm sort of demonstrating it here, but not fully, is a butterfly hug. So butterfly hug is nice just because it feels so kind of cozy. It feels sort of connective, like you're giving yourself some love. You can squeeze your shoulders, you can tap back and forth, and I'll get into tapping in a moment if you want to. It's just kind of a really cozy one. And what I like best about this one is that you can really easily do it anywhere. It's fairly quick, though, you know, don't rush through it. You want to be doing it as, you know, as much as you need for as long as you need. But it's easy to kind of just do anywhere if you're in public. But I don't always only do it in public. I also just do it when I just feel like what I want for the regulation is almost just more that almost feeling of comfort, right? And none of this, as I mentioned in the other video, which with my top tips about nervous system regulation, none of this is about suppressing. You're still just letting yourself be. It's about being okay in the moment, and you're doing this practice to process, and that's what regulates you. Okay, so since I started to mention tapping, I will do that one next. This one I have found to be the most effective of all when I'm feeling anxious. And it took me, I had tried, you know, I don't even remember how. I just sort of saw it, and I think maybe I was watching it and it was part of a series of talks or something when I originally saw about it. Sort of interested, but I just kind of couldn't ever get into it. But I think the key here is it goes back to one of those tips I had in that first video, which is that I didn't give it long enough. I didn't give it long enough and then individualize it like I have done recently. So it'll take you through, I'm not going to go through the whole thing here. This is what I'm going to link a video for. But basically, you're going to tap in different parts of your body, and you do it in a whole sequence. And you can just do the tapping as you feel, as you just let yourself be and feel. Sometimes you add in statements about how you're okay and you're safe, or maybe you add in very specific things about something particular going on. You can do all of that, but I really recommend, like I mentioned in the first video, that the first few times you sort of let a video or someone else take you through it. And so that will help you sort of get used to the feeling of doing it. But I also recommend, like I said in that video, that you do eventually individualize it, because for me personally, it's like adding in what's specifically happening for me. Is it that I want to sort of talk to the anxiety and say I'm safe? Even though I'm anxious right now, I'm safe. Reminding myself of that safety can be really important. Or maybe it's that something's happening and I want to say, hey, even though this is going on, I'm going to work through it. So it can look very, very specific like that for me sometimes. And so that's why I recommend both, starting with someone doing the video with you to sort of get used to the order and how you do it. And then eventually, though, making it really your own at any given moment and just using it in the exact way that you need to. Okay, the next one, and this I actually learned when I learned the breath work, because for one of the breath work series that we do in the training that I had, we have this at the beginning, the more active one. But it's can be used on its own as well as shaking. And so shaking, the idea of this, I believe, came from, at least people talk about this a lot when they talk about it, the fact that we see like animals, if they have something happen, whatever it is, they shake afterwards. Like they might shake a lot if it was a traumatic experience, but they often sort of shake it off. They shake off any little thing that might happen. And so we somehow have not sort of stopped doing this as humans, but it can be such an effective technique. You might think of it just physically and muscularly as getting tension out of your body, and I'm sure that's part of it. But when we shake, and you can even do this, lighter, really, really strong, I really make it my own for however much I'm feeling. If I'm feeling like I just want a little bit of shaking, or I really want to shake it out, like you can absolutely shift it up to whatever is going to work for you best in your particular situation, and just go with that intuitively. But like the strong shaking especially is so helpful for like if you're angry or you're frustrated especially, or you're just at really high energy. Maybe you just have a really, really high positive energy. You can also do something like dance around if you want for that. But if you feel like, you just have that impulse to move the energy through, that can be really important. So I feel like this is such an important one for not suppressing, but for moving through energy, whether it's just really high energy or because it's something that we perceive as more negative, like frustration or anger. Okay, so those are really all the ones I'm doing right now. But there is one more I'm just going to mention, because I am starting to sort of play with it to possibly incorporate it. And this one is the ice water on your face thing. You may have heard about this. It sort of has gotten some attention, I think, lately. But anyway, so sometimes people will just do, kind of the Wim Hof thing where they're trying to actually stay in like a cold shower for a certain amount of time. I really did not want to do that. I am like definitely a warm water person. I also really like warm practices. I like to go to sauna because I'm Finnish, that kind of thing. And so to me, the cold, sometimes you may have heard people jump in the snow after that, but that is a different thing. I think it's good for the nervous system, but it's a different thing in the sense of how it feels. Like it doesn't feel shocking in the moment if you've done a hot enough sauna, because it just doesn't. It actually feels good because you're so hot. But anyway, that was a little aside there. But in terms of this, it sort of does feel like more of a shock to the system, the way this is often done. So the shower thing is definitely not for me. However, the way I ended up using the one that's usually you put your face in a bowl of ice water, for however long you can sort of stand it, or go back in and out a bit. I tried that a bit, and I actually ended up working with my shower, but in a different way. So I'll still take my warm shower, and then at the end, I've turned the water off. I'll turn it back on to cold just at the end when I've stepped out, and I'll pop my face back in. I like this because it's really easy to do and easy to remember to do right after the shower. I don't have to set anything up, right? But so it's really easy to do. But so I'm kind of standing outside of the shower, chest inside, and only, getting my face back in. But at that point, it's very cold water. And so that can be just, a fun way to see how you can work with it in different ways. But I also want to give you a tip here, because some people don't like it. And this was sort of true for me too. I think this is why I don't like the bowl method, is I maybe have a little bit of claustrophobia, or I just don't like that feeling of my head underwater. I don't sometimes do it, swimming or things, but I don't do it that much. And so if that's true for you, my advice to you, whether you're doing it in the bowl, or to me, the shower works better for this reason too, because I don't feel as immersed, even though it's still getting the cold on my face. What you can do is, that helps, is, so take a deep breath in before you start, of course, but also if I breathe out through my nose, so you keep your mouth closed, but breathe out slowly through my nose as I'm doing it, it gives me something sort of active to not make me feel like there's a whole breathing thing going on where I can't breathe. So that's just a little extra tip if anyone wants to try my own technique that I use to try out this cold water technique. And like I said, I'm not like fully there yet. I have been doing it every morning, right, after my shower, but I'm not fully there yet where I feel like it's a part of my regular routine. So we'll see if that takes or not. And so just leaving you with the fact that you can look up just in general nervous system regulation, like I said in the last video, and find whatever technique works for you. There's going to be variations on the ones I just said. There's going to be ones I didn't even mention. And I'd love to hear in the comments if you have a favorite nervous system technique, or if there's one I didn't mention here that you've heard about that could be interesting for someone to try. So hopefully this was helpful. I think it's so important. This embodiment, this processing rather than suppressing, is so important. And it's really a part of like our taking on our own authority too, and our own power, like in our own lives, that we have these techniques we can work with to feel whole, to be regulated. And just it really, really is so important. And so I hope you will dive in. I gave you that whole slew, and that also was definitely not meant to make you feel like you have to do all those things. It's more to help you see the variety and how like you can start to pull some in, and maybe you trade some out sometime, maybe you have different ones for different times, but that there's just so much available to you. So hopefully that gives you just a lot of hope for adding this into your life to feel embodied and just to have things feel great. So you can just feel really good and regulated a lot of the time and start to have that feel what feels like the norm for you. Then everything else can unfold easier from there, whether it's relationships and connections, whether it's explorations and expanding, feeling awe even in your life, and feeling the good things and being able to receive them. This can be just so helpful as a regular part of your life, nervous system regulation.